Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. We're going to give people just one more minute to log in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right. So we'll go ahead and get started. And I want to first thank you all so much for joining us. This is the one of a series of 4 meetings that we are hosting to get feedback and input from various stakeholders interested in micronutrient and large-scale food fortification data. And so this one is in particular for those in the Asian time zone, but we hope that wherever you are, that you enjoy this presentations and then the feedback that we'll be doing. We really hope that unlike a typical webinar, this will be much more of a roundtable discussion. So we can, you can unmute yourself and speak and ask questions. And if we also will be sharing slides or sharing the summaries of all of the things that we're talking about. And those can go in the chat box now, or shortly they'll be appearing there. So you'll have access to a bit more information. I just want to give a very quick introduction, or go to the next slide of our agenda. And so here we'll do just a few minutes of introductions. I think we have a group that would be great to hear from each of you, just a brief intro, and then I'll give a small presentation about the DINA project as a whole, so that you'll have a bit more background on what this project is supposed to be about. And then Lynn Marley will give us some background information on the consensus lexicon that she has been working on, and we'll have a small discussion there as well. And then for the last presentation, we're really looking at the barriers and enablers of data collection, analysis, and use. And Reid will give this presentation, and it'll be followed by a relatively long discussion of about 20 minutes or so. So this is really the main part of the meeting, and we hope that you will be engaged and give us some good feedback on your thoughts. So that's quite important to us. Let's see, next slide. Next. All right, so most of the people you see with the cameras on right now are part of the team. So I am the program lead for the DINA project, and Reid Atkin is with us as well. He's the senior advisor to the Micronutrient Forum. Lynn Marley has been a consultant working with us over the last few months. Saskia Ozendarp is the executive director of the Micronutrient Forum. She unfortunately couldn't join us for this particular meeting. And Sonia Hess is another consultant that we have been working with on this project as well. And of course, a big thank you to the rest of the Micronutrient Forum Secretariat. Many of them are staying up late or getting up very early to join us today to make this all possible as well. So next slide. And I will pass it over to Reid just for a few minutes to give an introduction on the Micronutrient Forum as a whole, just in case you are not familiar. But go over to you.
Thanks, Megan. Thank you, Megan. Hi, everybody, and welcome. I hope that most of you are familiar with the Micronutrient Forum, most likely through our biannual conference, which most recently was held in November 2021 and will be held again sometime in September, October of 2023. That conference, we bring together experts from biological science through implementation to discuss micronutrient issues within a public health and global health context. And that event is really the hallmark of what the Micronutrient Forum does as we seek to champion and equip decision makers to eradicate micronutrient deficiencies globally. The Micronutrient Forum sits at the intersection of research, policy, and implementation. While we are an independent organization who doesn't implement programs ourselves, we appreciate that driving towards effective policy and programs is an important element of what we can all do at the global and national levels to drive eradication of deficiency. Next slide, please. The forum recently completed a strategic planning process where we reaffirmed our guiding principles, including the vision of a world where all people have optimal micronutrient status for health and well-being. And our strategy statement is really seeking to foster alignment and collective action to ensure the adoption and implementation of micronutrient policies and programs to make sure that they are evidence-based, comprehensive, cost-effective, efficient, and of course, safe. Next slide. As I mentioned, the forum works through our global conference, but we also host convenings, consultations, and conduct advocacy. This is a lesser known element of our work, but it's something that over the past 3 or 4 years, we've been dramatically expanding. We're currently hosting the Mighty Nutrients Coalition, which is an advocacy element to make sure that micronutrients are appropriately prioritized in global development agendas. And we host consultations, including the work we're doing on the Micronutrient Data Initiative. We're also working on women's nutrition and the Healthy Mothers, Healthy Babies Consortium and the Anemia Alliance, and host various convenings on those topics. So the forum is, we believe, an effective and essential player, making sure that global actions are translated to regional and national level, and that regional and national priorities are taken into consideration at the global level. And that's something that we hope to continue to do through our DINA work here today. Megan, back over to you.
Great, thank you so much. And so with that, I think we want to move over to introductions of the participants. So if you wouldn't mind, you can feel free to unmute yourself or turn on your camera, whatever you feel comfortable with, but it would be really great if you could give us your name, your organization, and your location. We've also started a poll just to get a little bit of background information on which areas you primarily work in and what part of kind of the data value chain you see yourself working in most. So I believe on all of these, you can pick multiple choices. So if more than one apply to you, feel free to use that. But would anyone like to introduce themselves?
Hello, good morning, good afternoon from the various regions of Asia. I'm Snigdha Mishra. I'm a nutritionist by training from the International Medical University, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I've been an ardent follower of Micronutrient Forum since the last 4 years, and currently I have started a project on maternal and child health on the first 1,000 days of life, introducing the UniMap formulation of MMS for pregnant mothers and following up the children up to the age of 2 years. So that's a sort of a brief about me. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to introduce themselves? Or you can also use the chat too if you don't feel you can turn your microphone on or would prefer to do it that way.
Hello, you hear me?
Yes, go ahead,
Yes.
please.
Yeah, my name is, full name is Min Kyo Tet. Just call me, the last name is Tet. I'm currently joining Zoom from Indonesia and the Regional Center for Food and Nutrition. So I did the doctorate here in Indonesia, originally from Myanmar, like Lynn. At the time that I joined this, my study in Indonesia, I started to know about Micronutrient Forum. So I have been following this, and last time I have a chance to make a presentation in the forum. And I'm following the update, and I'm glad to know that you're moving to the direction of the data and the more in a comprehensive way, and I'm going to follow throughout. That's all for me. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. It's nice to meet you both virtually. Would anyone else like to introduce themselves? No? All right, so we'll go ahead and we can move on. We'll finish up the poll, as I think most people have had a chance to participate. And we see some intros in the chat. Feel free to put more there. It'll just give us a sense of who all is here. And I'll go ahead and end the poll and share the results. So just so you all can see the other people on the call, where they're coming from, lots of program implementation, dietary diversification and modification, as well as some large-scale food fortification and supplementation being the main interventions, and a good mix across the data value chain of where people feel they fit. So this is great. Stop sharing this, and we can go to the next slide. So I'll now give an overview of what the DINA project is, and I realize I haven't yet said the full acronym yet. So it's the Micronutrient Data Innovation Alliance. And so this is a new project that we are working on. It's funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for the next few years to help support the data ecosystem for micronutrients and large-scale food fortification. And so one of the reasons that there was a need for this project is that we feel that the micronutrient ecosystem is somewhat immature. And what we mean is that it's just really not being supported in a way that it could be. And there's lots of holes and gaps in between the different steps between data collection and data analysis and data use for policies and programs, particularly in countries. So we know that this really manifests itself in a couple of different ways. And one is that reliable data can be really sparse. Just having more data would be nice, but also making sure that it's the right type of data with good quality and is helpful in justifying the need or design for programs, as well as optimization and monitoring them. We also know that data needs to be better analyzed. So when we do have data, sometimes it's not fully analyzed, or it could be analyzed in multiple ways, and sometimes that's not happening. So there's somewhat fractured landscape in terms of who collects the data and who analyzes it. And there's a general lack of coordination here. The last point that we've found in our analysis of all of this is that when it is analyzed, it's not necessarily being used by the right people. And that's namely to inform national level policies and programs. And we've also found that there can be a limited understanding by policymakers on the importance of micronutrient deficiencies. And so this makes it even harder to advocate for additional data. So really to solve this problem, we need to better identify and address deficiencies, and the field must really work together to become more efficient in advocacy, catalyzing funding, improving the design and measurement of programs. And this is really what we need for that more and better data and improved utilization. Next slide. So this is really where DINA comes in, and our approach is really to make an alliance of diverse members who are collaborating to improve the availability, quality, and accessibility and use of data across the value chain. And one of the big differences, I think, with this group is that we're really aiming to support national level decision makers and program implementers to make sure that we're really designing, implementing, evaluating, and optimizing programs to really benefit the people they're intended to serve. And so this is what we will be doing. Next slide. Let's see. All right, so we are currently building the alliance as we speak, and that is one of the major purposes of this call. We are currently in phase 1. This is sort of envisioned as a launch phase to get a lot of feedback from stakeholders such as yourselves. And this will really help guiding us in creating some of the priorities of DINA, We are also in the process of creating a membership drive and governance. So I'll discuss the membership in the next slide, I think, but we'll pop a link into the chat so that you can see a form there if you would like to become a member. We'll put that in the chat for you as well. But basically, we're currently working on a consensus lexicon, which I mentioned Lynn Marley will present in a few minutes. And this is really to bring together the multiple different sources where words involving or terms for large-scale food fortification and micronutrients can be found in one place, to really consolidate that and agree to the terms so that we can all sort of speak one language when it comes to micronutrient deficiencies and large-scale food fortification. The other major activity that we're undertaking during this part of the project is to better understand the data gap and the root cause analysis, which Reid will discuss in his presentation. And this is really to understand the underlying issues of data and where those gaps really are according to national level stakeholders. So this feedback is really going to be quite valuable to us so that we can really plan for the next phase of DINA, which will really be the implementation phase, where we try to catalyze and support the prioritized activities based on the needs of the community. So next slide, please. All right, so this is basically the governance. So it will be a membership model, and this is going to be free membership, so there's no concern there over costs. You can choose to either be an organizational member if your organization would like to join. There's an individual membership option. And then for those who work for organizations that don't allow them to join, there's also an observer status, so that you can have basically all of the benefits of being a member without actually needing to do any follow through with the membership application if that's not possible for your organization. We're also working on putting together a steering committee, and this group will really aim to oversee the strategic direction and the annual work plan for the group. And ideally, we would really like this to consist of a majority of participants from low and middle income countries. This is really supposed to support national level stakeholders, so we really want the steering committee to reflect that. And then there will be subcommittees, which will be the active working groups supported by the Micronutrient Forum and DINA Secretariat. So these will be the more active participants who opt in to joining a group on a particular topic or activity that we'll be undertaking as a group. So I do want to get some feedback here just on the overall model, and if there is a good way to maintain engagement of members in low and middle income countries. One option that we have entertained is to provide an honorarium if this is useful. Another bit of feedback that we've received is perhaps some travel support for, say, the Micronutrient Forum conference, and to be able to attend that as kind of a thank you for participating. And if we could just go to the next slide, I also want to share with you sort of the way we're sort of seeing the world through the data lens. So we have a number of different program activities, which mostly reflect what you saw in the poll, basically nutritional assessments, program planning, the enabling environment, implementation, and monitoring and evaluation. And then we basically see the landscape in a few different ways, from collection to curation, the exchange platforms that share the data, data analysis and modeling, and then the use of data as well to hopefully inform policies and programs. So I will, I think, pause here. And if you do have any feedback on my main questions, which were basically, we can go back to the previous slide, it might help. The feedback on the governance structure, maintaining engagement with others, and just the overall model. If there are any suggestions based on your experiences, we would be really happy to hear that.
Can I clarify further, Megan?
Sure, please.
Great, thank you. So when we say that we have the subcommittees, active working groups, so the subcommittees belong from the different countries within Asia, or do you mean that it is going to be across the different continents globally?
That's a really excellent question, and another thing that we've been considering. So DINA is a global project, so we plan to reach everywhere, but there are also plans to have kind of more regional or national hubs to help support more local contexts. So I think we're trying to do a little bit of both here and be very specific to the needs of a particular region or groups of countries or individual countries.
Great, great. Thank you for that. Now, I have another query. Now, for the membership model, now let's say since I'm interested in micronutrients and I have been started to work on a bigger project on micronutrients, I would like to go in as an individual member. My reason is very simple. Tomorrow, if I'm shifting or I'm relocating to some other position, I should be able to have the continuum rather than getting my organization involved and then later on when I skip out, the organization doesn't move further along with it. So is that permissible?
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons I think the individual membership is there, is for those who want to just participate for their own career or professional purposes. So that sounds like where you or your colleagues might fit in, especially in places where there is a lot of movement across organizations. I think that would be great. Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that. Now I would answer your question in my own way for maintaining engagement of members in LMICs. Yeah, I do appreciate what you put forth. To me as a person, I would see a support for personal engagement between the committee members. That actually enhances not only the connectivity, but also sharing of experiences through a greater level. We have, over the past 2.5 years, we have been connecting with people online and well, today also we are online. But having said that, sometimes with the Zoom fatigue, some of the things really do not sink in to the action level or execution level. However, if you were to personally meet people and then engage with them, I think the relationship is more firm, and also it can have a mutual sharing for implementation and rectifying the issues that we have in our respective regions. So I would support rather than the honorarium, I would rather support the travel support if possible can be given by Micronutrient Forum. That's the point from me.
Yeah, that's really excellent feedback. And I think we can all appreciate the Zoom fatigue and the more personal engagement you get face to face, I think is what I'm hearing. So that's very helpful feedback. Does anyone else have any thoughts, or also feel free to add to the comments? Yes, go ahead, please.
Hi, Madam, thank you. I think I like to echo Ibu Misra, that individual membership sounds very flexible. I think it is a way that a lot of us can continue. I have a question actually. You know, the micronutrient nature is all very specific. Some like zinc and iron and things like that. We already have zinc, for example. So my query is actually, is there any way that we can reflect in this governance? Can we reflect the themes of type of micronutrient, like groups of B vitamins and like iron and zinc and minerals? It's just something like, can we integrate in this model? That will be my question. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point that you're bringing up. There are a lot of groups that focus specifically on other micronutrients. And I think that's one of the reasons that this grant came to the Micronutrient Forum as sort of the home for micronutrients. And there is another project at the forum that's for the Mighty Micronutrient Coalition. And so this is a project that's bringing together the izincs of the world, the IGN, the B vitamin groups. And so we hope that these two groups will be very closely linked One of the pieces of our work plan that I haven't mentioned is really around the biomarkers or biochemical status data, which of course is quite critical to all of this, and really trying to provide some guidance under like how often to collect data, how to do it, what labs are available, really providing as much information as we possibly can to support those surveys. That's one of the, yeah. Reed, were you going to say something or jump in?
I think this is an extremely interesting point that has been raised, and I'd like to make sure we return to it later in the conversation after we've discussed the lexicon and the root cause analysis. Because in my mind, I was thinking about some of the working groups being more thematically organized. And I appreciate the point that you made, Megan, about some of the existing groups that address specific issues. And either this group will continue to offer feedback that it might be useful to have it either organized nationally or potentially by vitamin or mineral grouping, or perhaps there will be some consensus that some of these issues span either countries or specific vitamins, the ability to host data, to gather it, to exchange it, and that it makes sense to do it thematically. But I think we should really return to this towards the end of the conversation after we've talked about some of the work. Very interesting perspective.
Yes, I agree. We're jumping into discussion, which is really exactly what we wanted. Are there any comments or thoughts from others who have joined us? All right. I'm not seeing any hands raised or anything. So we can go ahead now to the lexicon. So if we can skip ahead to that intro slide. Yes, just as a reminder, on the previous slide, we do have a website that's available too, and we can put that in the chat as well. So this is one place where you can find information, and we do hope that you'll join us as a member, either individually or as an organization. All of that information is in the chat. So next slide. So now I would like to introduce Lynn Marley, who has been working on the consensus data lexicon that I mentioned earlier, and I will pass it over to her to discuss what she has been working on.
Thank you, Megan. Good morning, everyone from Thailand. Let me share with you how we come up with the development of this micronutrient consensus data lexicon. Can we move to the next slide, please? Thank you. We all aware that, and we have to acknowledge that there are multiple stakeholders and the diverse sectors who are engaging in the micronutrient program. So we feel that if there is inconsistent use in the terminology related to the micronutrients programs, then it will definitely interfere with the smooth communication among the involving stakeholders. So as Megan has rightly mentioned just before, that one of the early essential activities of DINA is to develop the micronutrient and large-scale food fortification data lexicon. So the idea and the main purpose of this effort is to establish a central repository of a consensus definitions on the terms related to the micronutrient programs and with a particular focus, but not limited to the large-scale food fortification program and their related data collection method used in the micronutrient programs. We acknowledge that there are existing effort by the existing data platform like Global Food Fortification Data Exchange and the WHO Vitamins and Mineral Nutrition Information System. They have already specified the definitions related to the micronutrients programs. But we see that efforts are still need to make sure that those definitions are universally adopted and centrally accessible. So we believe that through the development of the micronutrient and LSFF data consensus lexicon, a set of key terms and the consensus definitions of the micronutrient related terms will be assembled and made widely accessible, available to increase the program participation and understanding for facilitating smoother communication, of course, with emphasis on the importance of data meaningful for the programmatic decision making. It is not just enough that we have access to the data, but without making proper use of those data in the programmatic decision-making and implementation, we believe that those data will be just not a full meaning. So can we move the next slide, please? So our targeted beneficiary for the lexicon is, of course, those the stakeholders who are already engaging in the field, like policymakers and government implementers who are working in the micronutrient programs, and the researchers in the micronutrient field, private sectors and technical support agencies like GAIN, Nutrition International, PATH, and so on, and other professionals, and those in the related sectors like agricultural sectors, livelihood sector, who are involving and contributing to the micronutrient field. But not limited to those who are working or already familiar with the field. We also hope to benefit from our lexicon to those who are new to the field, like who want to research, who want to conduct the research in the micronutrients, and who want to engage in the micronutrient fields. So we believe that the lexicon will help inform the design, implementation, effective policy and decision-making, monitoring and evaluation of the large-scale food fortification and other micronutrient programs. So next slide, please. So this is how we come up with the development of the data consensus lexicon. Firstly, we have identified a set of terms, key terms related to the micronutrient and large-scale food fortification based on their programmatic implication. As in the previous overview slide that Megan also already mentioned, that we base on the programmatic implication, like if we want to implement a micronutrient program, we need to know the current existing situation of the target population. So we have to start up with the nutritional status assessment of the target population. What are the food vehicles that will be the best potential for establishing the food fortification programs and so on. So we started with nutritional status assessment, and then we plan for our program, and we continue with the implementation, monitoring, and evaluation. So based on those programmatic implications, we have identified a key set of terms on micronutrient and LSFF, and then we have reviewed the definition of those terms. So how do we come up with identify those terms? We have identified the terms from a variety of resources, including normative agencies like United Nations, WHO, FAO, US Institute of Medicine, USAID, and so on. And of course, also from the implementing and technical support agencies like GAIN, NI, PATH, and of course from the scientific and technical literatures. So after that, we have come up with a list of key terms related to the micronutrient and LSFF, and we link up with them with the respective citation. Currently, we are using the author date Harvard style of recommended citation, so that the users of the lexicon can see that from the original references that we have cited for those terms. After that, we have reviewed the definitions, the original definition mentioned in those references, those resources. And then in some cases, we have made some modification in the terms if needed. For example, if our original resource definition is restricted to the flour fortification, but we made some changes or modification in the original definition so that our definition in the lexicon will cover or reflect all forms of food vehicles, not just restricted to the flour, something like that. So we have made some modification by the DINA team. And then if for cases of the terms, if we found there are multiple resources with multiple definitions, then we listed out all the definitions of those terms, and then we propose one definition for the lexicon. In some cases, of course, we combine more than one resources, more than one definition from different sources and propose for the lexicon. And then we also apply the appropriate keyword for each term. So in some cases, for example, tolerable level of upper intake, the keyword, we believe that the appropriate keyword will be for those terms, upper limit is nutrient reference value, something like that, so that the user of the lexicon can easily sort it out and identify or search the terms by just typing the keywords. As I already mentioned, that when we identify the terms, we base on the programmatic implications. So we have also categorized the terms based on the programmatic implication, like nutritional assessment, planning, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation. Of course, some of the terms may be eligible under more than one category. For example, adequate intake may be also eligible under the category of nutritional status assessment when we have conducted nutritional assessment for nutrient intake of particular nutrient, then adequate intake will be eligible under the category of assessment. In some cases, the adequate intake may be eligible under the implementation as well as the monitoring and evaluation. So something like that. Next slide, please. So this is, can we move to the next slide, please? Yeah, thank you. This is how it looks like our current draft consensus data lexicon. Currently, we are preparing just with the Excel format for easy preparation and modification to be made. But of course, after the final stage, then we will make the lexicon in the user-friendly format in the Micronutrient Forum website. So in this Excel format, the draft lexicon, in the first column, as I already mentioned, that we have listed out the terms. And then the second column is the original definition that we have recorded from the resources, the respective resources. And then in the fourth column, we have made note whether we have made changes or modification in the original definition, yes or no. If yes, if we make some modification, then we add another column for the short note of why or how we have revised the original definition. For example, as I already mentioned, that we revised the original definition to reflect or cover all food fortification, not just restricted to salt or flour, something like that. And then we have also applied the keyword. So we also provide the column for keyword and the proposed categorization, or sometimes may be eligible under assessment, some may be both implementation, monitoring and evaluation, and the reference. In the original Excel file, you can also see the full list of recommended citation, as mentioned, that order dated style. And in this screen, in the third column is the proposed definition for the lexicon. Next slide, please. For cases of multiple definition, we propose one for the lexicon. And then one of the objectives of this consultation is to get feedback and the comments from the experts, variety of a larger group of experts, that to provide feedback and comment for those definitions that we have proposed with multiple definition and some definition that we have made changes into the original definition. So next slide, please. So after several round check of the review from the variety of resources that I've just mentioned, we have come up with 115 terms in the initial round in the lexicon, in the draft lexicon, and we found that 54 of them have multiple definition across different resources. And 12 of the terms, we have made some modification as suggested by DINA, as I already mentioned, to reflect or to cover variety or wider range of food fortification. And our next step will be to get the consensus on the lexicon. The idea is to seek the agreement for the terms with those with multiple definition or those we have made some modification or changes to the original definition. So the team proposed to use a modified Delphi approach so that we can get a wider range of feedback and consensus to get the finalization of that lexicon. Next slide, please. So the proposed approach for getting agreement or seek the feedback from the expert is, at the first stage, we plan to conduct an online survey. The goal is to engage a larger panel of multidisciplinary experts in the field of micronutrients, food fortification, and other relevant expertise. So we have identified or proposed 43 terms with those with multiple definition, and of course, what we have made changes or modification in the original definition. We plan to spread or disseminate those lists through the online survey via the Micronutrient Forum newsletter, and of course, through the personal contact through email and so on to get the feedback. So the respondents or the experts will provide grading of each term, whether this should be prioritized in the lexicon, and also provide the feedback or comment on the definition that we have provided. And then the responses from will be summarized from the round one, will be summarized, and the terms with 75% or more agreement will be considered as the final terms for the lexicon, and the remaining terms will be considered as pending. Then next slide, please. Then we will continue with the second round of the panel of experts. We plan to have an invited panel of selected experts from the DINA, and we will share the findings, summary of findings of the round one and also the panning terms from the round one with that expert panel. And then the panelists or the expert will have to grade each panning term and provide their feedback and suggestion. And then we have to summarize another responses. Those with 75% or more agreement will be considered as the final, and all other remaining terms will be considered as the panning. We are optimistic to have a final comment or consensus responses by 2 rounds, but if still needed, we will continue with the round 3 of the panel expert following the same procedure as mentioned in the second round. And then next step will be, next slide, please. Our next step will be to finalize the lexicon based on the feedback and responses from the round 1 and round 2, or if needed, round 3 of the expert panel. And then we will finally publish the lexicon on the DINA website in a user-friendly format so that the targeted beneficiaries that I have already mentioned can easily access and make use of the consensus definition on the key terms on the micronutrients, and they can continue with for the use of throughout the data value chain, whatever they want to. And we also plan to publish about the methodology paper on the lexicon development in a peer-reviewed journal. So this is what I want to share with you about the lexicon, how we come up with and how we develop this consensus lexicon. And thank you so much for your kind attention.
Great. Thank you so much, Lynn Marley. Are there any questions on this? And you can also preview the lexicon in the Dropbox link that was put in the chat at the beginning of the webinar. And then also there was a 1-page summary if you would like to reference that at any point as well. But any questions? If not, we hope that you'll look out for emails from the Micronutrient Forum to help us develop consensus on this. And in the coming few weeks, we hope to be able to put the Delphi method into use and collect everyone's feedback on all of these terms and make sure that we all agree. And we'll be publishing that as soon as possible. All right.
I have a quick question for Lynn Marley. If I'm wondering how she might think about including additional terms in the future, prioritizing areas for future iterations of the lexicon.
Thank you, Reed, for that question. What I missed to mention is that from the round 1 and round 2 of the expert discussion or consultation, that it is better we should ask for additional terms that the expert can propose, because based on the different perspective from the different experts they have come up from, so they have different views that some other terms that we are not included in the lexicon will be useful to be included in the lexicon. So we need to call for suggestion on the additional terms that are still missing in the current version. Then we will review again for the definition and the proposed lexicon. And we should highlight or consider that the lexicon version is the living document, not just a fix and finalize and finish. No more additional comments or feedback, not like that. So we need to consider as the living document so that we can, whenever there is update or feedback, then as appropriate, we can add. That's my thought on your question. Thank you, Reed.
Perfect. All right. So with that, I will pass it over to Reed to discuss some of the micronutrient and large-scale food fortification data blockers and enablers.
Thanks, Megan. If we could go to the next slide. There's been a lot of work done on specific issues inside the data landscape, but we think that there's been less work done on the landscape itself. And the opportunity that DINA sees in front of us is that we can facilitate the maturation of the micronutrient and large-scale food fortification data ecosystem. So the question is, how do we understand the challenges across a variety of contexts that have led to and maintained the data gap, and do that in a way that helps not only understand the data gap, but also helps develop a roadmap for DINA to undertake activities. So if that's the question we're facing, our answer is that the best approach is a variety of approaches. We started with the understanding and collective knowledge of the folks involved with DINA and the funder organization at the Gates Foundation, and in conversations with stakeholders that we initiated shortly after that. And the third step is these formal stakeholder convenings, this being one of 4 meetings we're convening to try and solicit feedback on our perspective and our questions. But after all that is done, we still want to take a structured problem-solving approach to thinking about the root cause analysis, the blockers, and the enablers. Next slide, please. So as we do that, we've categorized the current data ecosystem as immature. I do want to be very clear here that we don't think that the data is immature, nor do we think that the people working on the data are immature. Rather, it's that the way in which we work together, the way the field is organized, and of course that when I say the field, that's a very broad group of stakeholders, and that's part of the challenge we face. The way the field is organized is relatively immature, and that there are things we could do to strengthen the entire field that would make everybody's work easier and more effective. Specifically, we could make the data more normalized, more operable, better analyzed, and better used. Next slide. So the structured problem-solving approach we've identified as the best fit is something called root cause analysis, as developed in the 1970s or popularized in the 1970s by the Toyota Motor Company. And this is also known as the 5 whys approach. So anybody who has kids or nieces or nephews has been asked the question why repeatedly and understands inherently the logic behind really probing along a line of inquiry to understand the underlying causes and not just the symptoms. We believe root cause analysis is a pragmatic approach and that it will really complement the existing analysis that has been done in the field. Megan herself has done some of this work in collaboration with the Nutrition Modelers Consortium previously. The Micronutrient Forum has been involved with IZINC in some work they did identifying barriers and enablers to including micronutrient biochemical status in national surveys. But all of these approaches have sought to take a specific problem and a specific set of research questions and repeat interviews across a variety of stakeholders. In contrast, the root cause analysis will seek to ask probing questions of experts in a variety of roles across a variety of contexts and really understand what the driving force behind these issues are. Next slide. So there are 3 areas of inquiry that we have identified are often issues within the micronutrient data ecosystem. I've labeled these areas, and then in parentheses, I've included the areas as DINA defines them that the activity takes place. And the reason I've tried to summarize this is, although those of us on the call who work in data full-time might think about collection, curation, exchange, analysis, and use as 5 discrete steps in a data lifecycle, there are others who maybe think more holistically about the problem or the way the data is being used. And so I've included that summary in bold. So the first one is the availability of data. Whether it's not collected or whether it's not available for use after it's collected, we think that data is not always as available as it should be. And sometimes when it is available, it's not appropriately segmented or stratified by geography, socioeconomic status, and gender. That's one large blocker in the field. The second one is that data analysis is often insufficient. Whether that means that the ways the data is presented or displayed or accessible, the bandwidth and time of people or training is not available, we think that analysis is often incomplete. And that means that the micronutrient data that is collected, is curated, is exchanged, isn't always fully analyzed to the extent that we would like. And finally, the third potential blocker is that when that data is available and is analyzed, there's often not the adequate political will or the ability to coordinate the required resources to turn that analysis into programs and policies. That means that either policymakers don't prioritize micronutrient or health issues resulting in micronutrients, or that even if they do, there's not a mechanism to make various policies happen. Next slide. So, sorry, can you go back to that previous slide? So we have shared these areas of inquiry with a handful of stakeholders. We've gotten good feedback that these are the right questions to be asking. And before we embark on the formal root cause analysis, where we conduct interviews with stakeholders across a variety of contexts and in a variety of roles, who are both national decision makers and the technical assistance that supports those folks, we want to make sure that we have pressure tested these 3 areas of inquiry, that these are the right areas, these are the most impactful areas, and the ones we should be following up on. So we have some more specific questions to ask the group, but I'll stop here and ask first if there are any questions on what I've presented here on the root cause analysis, any questions on the area of inquiry, and then most importantly, ask for your feedback on these 3 areas, if there are any we missed, and how you think about these as priorities. So over to the group for any feedback there might be.
Any thoughts from the group? We also do have another quiz question or poll question, if that's also a helpful way to get the discussion started. So basically, we're asking what you think the largest challenge is with micronutrient and large-scale food fortification data. Yeah, I think we'll just wait 2 more seconds. Looks like everyone has responded. All right, I'll go ahead and end the poll and share the results so you can all see, hopefully, the way that others answered. It looks like the sparse reliable data is probably the #1 largest issue, and then the existing analyses not being adequately used, and then 1 vote for all of the above, which sounds fair. So I'll go ahead and stop showing this. Oh, wait. Sorry, I need to make it go away. There we go. So that's helpful to know. Any thoughts or questions on what we discussed?
Given that the survey indicated that the availability of data is a blocker, I wonder if we should advance to the next slide and ask the group those specific questions.
Yes, please go ahead.
Can I read?
Yes, go.
Okay, thank you. So when we are looking into the availability of the data, did you consider the national data available, or was it the data through publications which had been published by the different regions around the globe? Just wanted that clarification. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's both. I think that one of the things we think about at the forum is sort of the gold standard of nationally representative status survey, but also thinking about large-scale food fortification and nutrition more broadly. There's also dietary data that's needed and many other sources of data to develop a program or implement a policy. And so we were really trying to think about it more broadly. I think one of the big blockers with study data is that it's often locked up in links or not linked to at all by the study authors. And that's something that I know one organization, the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation, who publishes the Global Burden of Disease, I think they're very good at tracking down that data and trying to normalize it. And it's something I've been wondering if we should try to work with them to make that data more broadly available, and if that would be something that's useful to academicians, researchers, and policymakers. Any thoughts?
I think that's a good idea, but also we should be mindful of the duplication of data as well, because some of the national data, which you are seeing it as a huge data set, some of them are also being used to publish individual papers by specific research institutions. So possibly there could be quite a scope for duplication as well. If not, the data could be slightly skewed for that particular region or country. But I do agree that yes, we could access the other data which is put on hold and is not available on the public domains as well. Thank you.
Agreed.
Yeah. Ted, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. I actually I agree the way that analyze the data and store the data and share the data. It's a very important point. And before that, just for your information, some country like us, it is very difficult to convince that micronutrient assessment, national survey, it is important. It is essential. It is very difficult to convince. And in our country, it's only once until now. It happened only once. And so I think this is the first challenges in like country like us. That is the first phase, that the one we can highlight more how these data are critical and how the important role in their improving the nutritional status of mother, child, and babies is if we can make this bold statement, that would be an important target to the policymaker from this effort. That's my first hope. And regarding the data, I think sharing the data, and there are a lot of sensitivity around there. And I think that the effort should be aiming at how we convince that they are comfortable with the approach strategy. For example, like personal identifiable information, how we can make strict of this kind of things, and how the data will be stored. And another way of duty of this approach is if we compare, we set up, for example, like DHS survey, the variable names are the same. So if we can come up with this kind of approach, say, if we have the same variable names and if we compile the data in the region, let's say in South Asia region, and they are analyzed, they will be analyzed across country comparison, that kind of things. And this will generate not only the benefits for the country, but for the region and for so on. One of them is how country will feel safe if the data is stored in some way. So data security is the point that I think we should be maybe you or maybe already have been thinking about that, but maybe in the next steps, maybe this how a micronutrient forum or DINA team can convince to the policymaker, to the stakeholder, that we will be guaranteeing that there will be no personal information there, and we will keep your data in the environment that is safe and secure. Probably, maybe we will be talking about high performance computing in the future that will allow multiple country comparison by region or by continent, something like that. That would be my thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah, I think those points are really well taken. And considering data security is, of course, important, especially when you're thinking about exchanging data among countries. But I think one of the ideas that we have is to create regional hubs, especially for the South Asian region, where the countries are used to somewhat collaborating. And hopefully that can be used as sort of an advocacy tool. If one country has done something, maybe that will encourage the neighboring countries to participate as well and to share their data. And then that opens up a kind of a whole new world in terms of modeling and work that can be done to more accurately represent what's happening in the country. But I also hear your point about advocacy. And do you have any thoughts on the best way to do this, or to reach in like the right people who need to be convinced of this? One of the things we've been trying to think about is doing case studies where that advocacy has been done very well and has led to data collection and better programs. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I do agree with that. Because they will be only seeing the example. They will take it more what do you call it? They can take it more seriously if they see the life experience or the real case study. So we need to demonstrate that maybe you may pinpoint or some area or country or things like that, and convince that how this system will work and how it benefits to the people, not only in terms of nutritional status, but also in terms of GDP or something like that, long-term like modeling. That would be more interesting for the people from the low and middle income country, because there will be some of their main interests will be not only you need to balance, right, the resource and the benefits. So if this kind of cost effectiveness analysis can also be useful, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Can I add on?
Sure, please.
I completely echo Mr. Head's point. And it is very, very important also to show to the policymakers or the government per se that it could reduce the economics of the health cost, which is currently being a big booster for all budget. You see, the healthcare cost has increased substantially. So if we are in the long run, if we can adopt and adapt to the micronutrient deficiencies of the population, we could always reduce the healthcare costs in the longer term. Basically, the reason why I say this is currently the project that I am undertaking with use of multiple micronutrient supplementation is also to show the economics of the healthcare, which can be substantially managed for the population, especially the lower middle class, as well as the lower socioeconomic group of the population. So I completely agree and echo Mr. Hett's point. Thank you.
Great. And Lynn Marley, go ahead, please.
Yes, just want to share our experience in Myanmar about how we approach the policymakers to convince them the importance of the micronutrient problem, and of course having the updated and quality data. Of course, as Mr. Ted already mentioned, that like our countries, it's really challenging to conduct such kind of comprehensive micronutrient survey. And we have started since end of 2015. And by the time we could enable the data collection was in 2017, more than almost 2 years we took for preparation, and quite several challenges a lot. And of course, it is quite expensive too, especially if we include the biochemical data. But one of the approaches that we had to make sure the complete go through of the data value chain, not just collected, analyze, and release the report, finish, not like that. We have to convince the policymakers that how we best apply the report, the data that we have obtained from such expensive survey. And that's the reason why we have tried to start immediately use of the findings from the micronutrient survey, starting from the interim report. We continue with the multi-sectoral national plan of action on nutrition based on the findings from the interim report of that survey. And we show them, okay, we have 15 provinces in the country. See that which part of the countries are facing which kind of nutrition problem as the severe public health significance. So that's why we need to focus on those interventions in those areas immediately, or things like that. We highlighted them, we show them what's happening, what is the need for program implementation, and then we demand for their political commitment and support. just want to share with you what we have done in the past for Myanmar, how we convince and advocate to their policymakers. So I think we need also to make those kind of effort in the other part of the world. Of course, some other countries are they going through well advanced, but just sharing our experience. Thank you.
That's very helpful. And I really appreciate the experience in Myanmar as well. I think, so we've talked quite a lot about the advocacy in terms of getting new data as being one of the major hurdles, but I see in the chat as well that there is a comment from Suzanne about not just for using data to develop the policies and programs, but to also help to improve the existing policies and programs, which I think is also really important to make sure that things are being run efficiently. And there's a real cost effectiveness element there that can be brought in as well. So I think that's a really nice point. And if you feel like jumping in and adding more to that comment, please feel free. Any other thoughts or comments or anything from you, Reed?
Yeah, I just want to follow up on, I think, that point that Suzanne raised, that it's not just about new policies, it's also about improving existing policies and programs. One of the findings of the IZINC analysis into barriers and enablers was that there is, unsurprisingly, a positive correlation between the existence of programs and the willingness of governments to undertake nationally representative surveys and include the biomarkers of a particular micronutrient that is a party to a program. And we were having this meeting with a different stakeholder group previously, and somebody suggested that DINA could put out guidance about what a country could do with regards to large-scale food fortification in the absence of nationally representative status data. And the idea being that there are potentially other ways to identify the likelihood of deficiency and identify the appropriate food vehicles and then make those recommendations sort of in a global document that would offer a decision tree. And it's an interesting idea that if we promoted the creation of fortification programs, taking all these complicating factors into account, such as excess and toxicity and cost and the local context, that it in and of itself would lead to more data collection. And it's a little bit of, I don't know, chicken versus egg or egg versus chicken in what approach should be taken. But I thought it was a very interesting suggestion, and I wonder if there's any feedback from this group on the wisdom of recommending some action be taken in the absence of that gold standard data. Over. Lynn Marley, I wonder if you have any thoughts on that suggestion.
I think we should consider as the alternative option if we don't have the reliable data, and not just letting the countries without any data, they are not left behind, and we consider the best possible option for them to move forward so that we don't leave anyone behind. So it is also a great idea that we can propose for those option, gold standard option. That's my personal thought. Thank you. But of course, it should not discourage them not to have the data, but still encourage them to have to put the effort to have the reliable and updated data.
One of the other items that was mentioned in a previous meeting, Megan, was the lack of awareness of micronutrient issues amongst nutritionists. And I wonder if there's any thoughts from this group about the awareness of their colleagues who don't directly work in micronutrients about the specific issues in micronutrients, whether it be the differences between vitamins and minerals or the complexities of large-scale food fortification, or the sort of difference between the way we collect and think about micronutrient status versus the way nutrition sometimes thinks about calories and diets in that context.
Yeah, I think that was another level of advocacy that was brought up just among the nutrition community. Is that anyone's experience? I also see in the chat it's good to encourage the inclusion of data collection on micronutrients as part of the National Health Surveys, which is another angle that I think we're hoping to help smooth out, especially with DHS-like surveys or nationally representative data collection. Hopefully, if you can piggyback onto those surveys, you can really have some cost savings there as well.
Yeah, of course, one of the barriers is that the cost of analyzing, including the biochemical samples, is one of the biggest barrier that countries cannot include comprehensive set of micronutrients in the, especially in, even in the nutrition survey. The most that we can do is anthropometric assessment and the dietary assessment, but including the biochemical data is quite expensive, and it is one of the challenge and the barrier. And
yeah.
Reed has rightly mentioned that when we say nutrition problem, in the past time, I mean, what they just have seen first is protein energy malnutrition and the children with kwashiorkor, marasmus, and so we have to advocate or sharing the updated knowledge on the, not even the double burden, triple burden of nutrition, the problems of micronutrient deficiencies, and so on. So a lot more effort is needed. Thank you. Misra, Ibu Misra.
Yeah, okay, if I can just share, yes, it is quite expensive for running the biochemical test. But having said that, we can always go into analysis of a subset of the population. We don't need to have the entire population, we need a representation. So if we can go for that, it will substantially reduce the cost, and at the same time, it will also add value to the gold standard of the data that we are trying to analyze and project in order to create further interventions based on it. Thank you.
Great. I also, one of the suggestions that we've been entertaining as well is to consider a funding mechanism or some sort of pool of resources that could help contribute to a biochemical status data for micronutrients as well. So hopefully, I don't control the donors, but if we can at least do some advocacy there to help bring some funding as well, or co-funding to help countries, that might also be supportive. Please go ahead.
Yes, I just want to jump in there. Yeah, there are challenges, but there are some good news as well. Like the way that Ibu Misra mentioned, subsample, that definitely is one way to go. In addition, the volume of the blood. So how much is required and the price. So recently there was a technology like microassay, and then use a very small volume like quantity system. So I think one of the way that I like to suggest is yes, it's true that you provide offer the finding for country low income country to encourage them to do the survey. But I think one of the other way is you provide the service. I don't know, just my imagination. So regional, so let's say in South Asia, this is a central lab, you were set up in somewhere, and you will say we will support, you just collect, we will support the assessment. And our method where we require little volume of blood, or serum or plasma. And this is incentive for the country. And this way, I think you can also standardize the method of assessment. Maybe I'm too much optimistic, but this is how I'm thinking. So centralizing the lab and supporting the lab is also a way I think to be thinking about. That's my suggestion.
Yeah, I appreciate your optimism. That's something I also think about quite often, and minimizing the sample volume, minimizing the need for a cold chain, all of these things would make life a lot easier indeed. And this is one arm of the project. I hope we'll be really exploring this and the new Quansa system. We've been reading their white paper about that as well. Hopefully some of these things will make it a lot easier to be able to do, not quite point of care assessment, but close, and will help create that, as well as the creation of regional labs. That might also
Exactly.
be a great way to kind
exactly.
of team up.
Yeah.
So thank you. Any other thoughts or comments from those on the call? I think this has been a really nice discussion that really complements and echoes a lot of the things that we've heard from others, which is always good. So hopefully we can kind of converge on a few ideas. If we could go to the last slides. Maybe. I don't know, I think we have a thank you slide in there, but I do really want to thank all of you for joining us. We really appreciate your feedback. If you do think of anything else that you would like to let us know about, please feel free to email us. We'll also be following up with a survey, so if maybe that will trigger some additional thoughts from any of you. And please do feel free to keep in touch. There's an email address on the membership form that you can also use to just contact us at any time. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you in future DINA related events. We hope to have a little bit more public facing projects coming up soon. And we hope to see you again.
And can we put that link to the membership form one more time? Well, we hope you all consider joining either organizationally, programmatically, or individually.
Can I just have a quick question? Who do we
Please.
send the membership form to?
Yes, so I can put that in the chat as well. So that'll be DINA at micronutrientforum.org.
Thank you.
That way you don't have to remember how to spell my name. There we go. So, and that's also the email address you can use to contact us. So, all right. Well, thank you all so much. And I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.